Great. So our procedure is going to be as follows. We are going to have our presenters make their remarks, and we will ask you, the audience, if you have questions online, you can put your questions in the chat, and we will read your questions. If you are here in person, we've distributed some index cards, and so please write your question on an index card, raise your hand, and one of our League of Women Voters, the League of Women Voters board members are wearing these special scarves. And so you can give that person your card, your question card, and they will present it to us. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our presenters to briefly introduce themselves. Tell us specifically your name, a brief background about yourself, and we'll begin with Dr. Hadiya Suar.
For having us facilitating this conversation. I know that it's always incredibly necessary, but sometimes challenging to have conversations about status, in part because these are conversations that we can distance ourselves from. They're ones that we are all implicated in, and about subjects that are important to us, like our identity and survival. I am Dr. Hadiya Suar. I'm from the island of St. John, and what some St. John's in Palawan, I'm bred to Honolulu, Virgin Islands there. I currently serve as the director of the Virgin Islands Caribbean Cultural Center. I am also the founder and co-president of St. John, the St. John Heritage Collective, a land rights and cultural heritage preservation nonprofit based in St. John, U.S. Virgin Islands. And I like to say I'm a mommy of two. And the other things, I traffic as a philosopher, an Africana philosopher specifically. I'm deeply concerned about questions of freedom, political status, climate justice, given our frontline position in climate change. And I'm deeply excited about the possibility of having a conversation here today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tanisha Bailey-Roca. I am an attorney, member of the Virgin Islands Bar for the past 19 years. I was also the St. Croix unit leader for the League of Women Voters, so it's good to be back home. I miss you, and I'm so glad I was able to make it over here. Thank you for putting on this most important discussion, and thank you for sandwiching me in this big mental chicken sandwich we have going on here. We've been talking for over the past week about this discussion, so I'm really excited to hear all the beautiful ideas that's going to come from us and from you. Really quickly about me, I am a big foodie. I have a website food blog, one of the first food blogs in the Virgin Islands, the cruciancontessa.com. And I have neglected it because I have other work that I do that has demanded my time. I am a wife of one and an army of two at my job. And I'm just glad to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Malik Sifu. I don't want to say much about my family except that I'm born and raised here. I have ties to St. John and even ties to Dr. Suar. And even alone, I am a professor here at the university for 2 years. Actually, this year marks 25 years I've been a professor here. I am one of the people who would be considered the advocates for addressing political status in the Constitution of the Virgin Islands. I am eager to read this discussion. I had made a joke with the one that Hayes called Merchant Market years ago. And if I can quote Napoleon, he says, leaders must be merchants of a dream. So I hope we are merchants of a dream today and we promote some good topics and good ideas for you today. Thank you.
Can I have that one? I forgot to say I am born and bred Crucian from Frederickston.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for inviting myself and putting together this fantastic panel. Really looking forward to the discussion we will have. My name is Mark Wenner. I'm also a multi-generational Virgin Islander. I grew up on St. Thomas. I've been a professor at UBI for the last 3 years. So I always hear the laughter of Malik, who sits right above me. And we have intense conversations at the staircase. But in terms of my background, I basically grew up here, went to St. Peter and Paul, and moved to the States for higher education. I got sidetracked, stayed away for 40 years. Most of the time, I worked as a professional development economist. I worked for Inter-American Development Bank, World Bank, Apt Associates. I have a PhD in applied economics. I've worked in over 33 countries, lived in 3 long-term, and then I decided to come back home in 2019 and have become a hobby farmer. And I like to write photography, and here I am, very, very interested in this topic because of the connection it has with economic development. That basically this political status question shapes economic development trajectories. And so that is how I'm coming to live and looking at that. So looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. And this is why we call it the Fabulous Four. You know, because the League of Women Voters, just as a little background, we are a nonpartisan group. We evaluate factors that affect the voting public. We assist voters in making informed decisions by presenting unopinionated information, evidence-based information based on evidence and on data. And to see why we chose these 4, because we believe that these 4 fit that category and they can adhere to that category. So you're not going to hear a lot of talk show kind of conversations here. You're going to get the facts, you're going to get the figures, and we're hoping that as a result, when you cast your votes, or when you speak with people in the community about this topic that is essential to our existence here in the Virgin Islands, that you can speak authoritatively as well and intelligently as well. So without further ado, let's begin. What I'd like to do first is to define the terms that we're using, because people use terms like political status, the Constitution, free association, really understanding the definitions. So we're going to begin by first, I'm going to ask Professor Professor Gerard Emanuel, Professor Gerard Emanuel, to define for us what do we mean when we say political status. Why is the discussion on political status important? And Professor Emanuel, could you begin by answering that question for us? Defining the...
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Molina. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Oh.
Go ahead.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me. I'm a retired educator. Well, it's a difficult thing to define. You can't find a definition of it online or in any dictionary. But basically what it is the legal position or standing of a place that determines the extent to which its citizens can govern themselves internally, as well as the extent to which they can engage in external affairs. And in international law, there exist 3 distinct political status options, which we'll be getting to later. But I think, Dr. Molina, you wanted me to mention something else. What was it?
You wanted me to mention something else?
No. Thank you very much.
That's good? Okay, that's good then.
So we are going to be asked when the United States has to report to the United Nations about its territories. And so I'll ask Gerard or Dr. Sekou, why does the United States have to report to the United Nations about its territories, and what does that have to do with political status?
First, Dr. Molina, I think there was a problem with hearing Gerard said, be repetitious And Gerard, you will let me know if I said it right, but Gerard said, Professor Emmanuel said that the discussion on political status can be somewhat difficult because of terminology, but that the United Nations has three options that deal with political status, and the three preferred options would be independence or sovereign independence, free association, and integration as an integral part of the society. Am I correct, Gerard? Give me a nod, yes or no?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, good. I'm making sure I said it right. Well, the United Nations was formed in 1945, and there was a UN charter created that stated that a new standard was created in the global community that the world would now look at equal rights, human rights, self-determination as international standards. That up until that moment in time, the world never had that principle, those principles promoted. And in resolutions 1514 and 1541, the General Assembly passed two principles that stated that an objective of humanity is that the entire world will have a desire, an aspiration for self-government, which can be expressed in three basic ways, as Gerard mentioned. What Gerard didn't say, and I want to emphasize that in 1970, a third resolution was passed called Resolution 2625 that says not only are the three options preferred, but any option democratically approved by the people is considered an expression of self-determination. Many of the people here don't really use those resolutions as a basis, but we, in the discussion of self-determination, we say that for a society to be considered modern and developed, it should have a level of self-government. The United States is a signatory, and the United States supports this principle, and therefore it must report to the rest of the world how it has achieved these objectives to the global community.
And so on an annual basis, if a territory has not made a determination about their status, the mother country then has to continue to report to the United Nations until the people have decided what they want by vote. Is that correct?
Your English is better than mine, Dr. Wanda, but I'm gonna modify the language. In the United Nations jargon, United States call it an administering power. The metropolitan power. So you use that word to be very generic. In our context, the United States is not just an administering power, it is the country we are affiliated with. And the US must tell the world, not only have we voted on status, but what steps have we taken to address the political, economic, social, and cultural development of the society. So it's not just a discussion of, well, have they voted on status? It also has to explain, did this territory make a commitment towards the Constitution? Have we become more autonomous? Have we become more progressive in our infrastructure? Now, we don't have to discuss whether we resolve one problem, but we can discuss our structural development.
Right. So this is an ongoing activity then. This is ongoing, and we're going to be facing this for the foreseeable future until some final resolution is determined. And so we wanted, the league wanted to set a nice foundation for which we can intelligently move forward in coming to a decision on this. So this is not going to, I think the intention is to have a resolution, a referendum in 2027. Is that not correct? Yes, and so that is now just what, 3 years from now that we're going to be faced with another referendum, and we have to prepare ourselves for that. The League of Women Voters has decided that between now and 2027, we're going to sponsor a series of discussions on the topic, different aspects of the topic moving forward, so that when we come to 2027, people will feel hopefully that they have been advised to the point that they are ready to make an important decision. So that is our goal. Now, Dr. Sekou, this is not, 2027 will not be the first time that we will be voting on political status, that's correct. I believe it was in 1993 that there was a referendum on political status. Why are we here today if we had that referendum in 1993? Very, very briefly.
I would have preferred if you answered, that's a tough question, put them in a hot seat, but, it was a vigorous process. The 1993 referendum was based on a series of decisions. There was the first status commission was formed in 1980 by Colbert Ackley. It was unable to prevail because of lack of resources. The second one was started around 1988, and it was expected that there was going to be a referendum in 1989, but Hurricane Hugo stymied the process. And then there was a revitalization of it, and the status commission was formulated by then Governor Alexander Farley, and there were at least 7 options, 7 ways to deal with it. There was a vigorous discussion. In fact, one of the more pronounced participants was Dr. Lucy Mullen. I said a while ago, he was very, very active in giving his input about Commonwealth proposal. Another person who was involved was Mr. Godley, who's no longer with us. He dealt with compact. And there were some who supported statehood, like Arthur Todman, Herb Schomburn, and a handful of people who supported free association and independence. And there was an honest attempt to uplift the public. There was also an active boycott, where some of the activists perceived that only native Virginians must have this right. And that mixed message had the effect of causing a low turnout. Turnout was 27% of the registered voters, and those who actually voted for territorial status as the preferred option. And it was a failure in the sense of a lack of complete input, but also success because of one step towards resolving the issue.
So what can we do? What do you think we can do to avoid those traps? Well, for one thing, I think one thing might be that we have reduced the number of options that are going to be on the ballot. You're absolutely correct, and I believe my brother, Dr. Lucien Molinar, would agree as well, that those large number of options that were available was a signal that it was going to fail anyway. You were never going to get a majority of people voting for any one of the options. And as you pointed out, there were other values differences between members of the public that scared off some of the other people. So I think having a fewer number of options that are available for us to vote on might contribute to the to a passage in, as well as a very strong educational program that we can talk about facts without getting too upset about some of the issues. So putting these things out forward now, I think would be one way, 2 ways of moving perhaps closer to a successful outcome. So let's now begin by looking at the 3 options that are probably going to be on a referendum ballot. That is the option of independence, or the option of statehood, full integration, or a free association. Free association was the third option. And we're trying to fix Gerard Emanuel's mic. I don't know if there's any way, Gerard, that you can fix the audio on your mic, because I think you have some very important things that you can say about free association. So let's begin, and I'm going to ask the panel members to briefly describe what is the independence option? What are the characteristics of an independent entity in the United Nations terms? What can we expect? So which one of our panelists would like to approach the aspect of what independence? Okay, Gerard, until we can get you.
He can try.
Oh, Gerard, can you try and speak now? Would you like to speak to the independent option?
I will go after Dr. Sekou, if you can hear me.
Oh, we hear you loud and clear. He's very sorry that the audio fits. Okay, so Dr. Sekou, tell us, what do we mean by independence?
Well, I'll simplify it first. Independence, or the way the United Nations would state, it's independent sovereign, which means in principle, in theory, that this society would have the last say in terms of foreign policy, domestic policy. It will be considered one of the members of the United Nations. It will be able to make decisions for its own self-interest, be responsible for its own, will have its own authority over all issues in principle. That means on paper. It will be like an 18-year-old leaving his or her parents' home and has to fend for himself or herself. I think all of us had that experience. There's a time when mommy and daddy said, time to leave. You know, you think you want to be a man, you can leave now. So that sense of power resides in your own situation. You have the legal authority. You have the political power, legal authority, and the decisions for yourself. In principle, in theory, that's how it works. In practice, it's a different situation. In practice, we live in a world situation in which, depending upon your geography, your economic conditions, you may very well be interdependent on everyone else, and maybe dependent upon a larger power or a society next to you that has a lot of say in terms of how you make your money and how you exist. For instance, Mexico is independent for a long time, but Mexico is interdependent of the United States, and same as Canada. So when we say independence, it doesn't mean that you don't have ties to your neighbors. In fact, you have become more interwoven than ever before, but you have the legal authority to make decisions for your own self-interest, and it's a legal power that's called sovereignty.
Okay, anybody else who wants to contribute to what a definition of independence? Okay, okay, so let's. Okay, so let's move on to the other, okay, yes. Okay, so now let's look at statehood. What does statehood mean? Just describe briefly what you mean by statehood. Yeah, that's an easy one.
That's like a marriage. To my right, people have the families. There are 50 spouses in the United States. Is that correct? 50 spouses are married together.
Yeah.
It's not a polygamous relationship, but it's multiple marriages. When we say state for the United States context, the US is a federal society, so that at the national, there's a federal level of power and administration, but at a subnational level, there are 50 different entities that are on paper, they are equal, and is represented by an upper house of Senate, in which each state has 2 state senators, and based upon geography and population, you have a lower level called a House of Representatives, which means that based on population level, you have more representation. If we were to become a state, hope I'm saying the right word context, if we ever became a state, we would be one of the smallest of states ever. We would have our 2 state senators, 1 representative because of our population. Until we get a population of more than 500,000 people, it's 400. Okay, very good. Until we get that population, which would that happen anytime soon, I hope, it would mean we have no more than 3 combined, 2 senators and 1 representative. And for some people, that might appear to be too powerful for a tiny island. But of course, we want even more, because during Gordon, we want more power. So we would be a very small state with appropriate power. We are part of this 51 state configuration, if it ever had to happen. So that's what statehood means for us.
Okay, I don't want us to talk about the impact on these options on us yet. If we want to define what the options are, then we will answer. So let's move now to free association. So, and the expert here in free association is our Gerard Emanuel. Gerard Emanuel, what is free association?
Oh, can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Free association is exactly what it is, a free association between 2 political entities. Usually one is more powerful and independent, and the other one is a colony or some type of a territory that is trying to advance itself. But the essence, the essential feature of a free association is some type of an agreement, a mutual agreement between the two parties. What normally happens is that the weaker territory or the small territory has full internal self-government, but it may agree to give defense and or foreign affairs authority to the larger, more powerful country. So that is one of the options that we have.
Can I add to that too?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that also to add to this compact of free association is that it's a relationship between two sovereign states, but as Dr. Emmanuel said, one tends to be small and one tends to be powerful, and they previously had some kind of colonial relationship. So to give you some specifics, currently the United States has what they call free associated states, 3 of them in the Pacific, and they were inherited from World War II. These places belonged to Japan. The Japanese Empire, the US took them over in 1946 and under the United Nations Trust Authority. So we're specifically talking about the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia and Palau. These places are very, very small. The population of Palau is 18,000. The population of the Marshall Islands is 41,000. The population of the Federated States of Micronesia is 114,000. At that time, these places were economically inviable, and the United States saw geographic, geostrategic interests in these places. So, for example, 67 nuclear tests were conducted in the Marshall Islands. 2 atolls have been completely obliterated, and up to this day, the United States pays indemnifications to the people who suffer from radiation. And you cannot even visit certain parts of the Marshall Islands because of active radiation. But a more important feature for us as to take as a lesson is that these agreements are normally at 20 years and they get renewed. So the most important thing economically is that the United States guarantees a certain transfer of economic assistance every year. So in the case of the Marshall Islands, it was $800 million. They currently re-upped their agreement and now it's $2.3 billion. The United States also provides technical service. So basically the Interior Department, Office of Insular Affairs, United States Agency, the United States Coast Guard, the United States military have very, very strong ongoing relationships in these areas. And then lastly, and most importantly, is that the people of these places, they are citizens of their republics. They have the Republic of Palau, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, but they have free non-immigrant rights to travel to and from any United States territory. And no visa requirements are needed. It's reciprocal. American citizens can also live, work, travel to these places without any restrictions. As a result of this non-migrant arrangement, roughly half of the population of all of these freely associated states have moved to the United States. And these islands are very economically dependent on appendages of the United States. They depend on tourism, they depend on financial transfers from the United States, 60 to 70% of the local budget, and remittances from the people who live in the US mainland.
Do they vote for president?
No, they're independent states. They vote for their own leaders, their own representatives. They have their own legislature, their own head of state. So the US basically handles defense and external affairs, but they are represented in the United Nations. They are represented in the Olympics. They have their own flag, they have their own citizenship. They're sovereign states.
Dr. Sadia has a question. Could you pass the mic on to her, please? Yeah.
So I actually want to add to this and to summarize a little bit, in part because as I was preparing for today, I challenged myself to talk about political status at like a 4th grade level. In part because I got 4th grade at home, and you say the young people are the future, and so I really want them to be able to keep up with our conversation and for this to be an accessible conversation for all of us in the Virgin Islands. And so for any of the elementary children listening, but also for all of us here, if we're understanding political status as how an individual or collective body is being organized, governed, and legally recognized, then we can also think about political status in terms of who has supreme authority, right? Who does the buck stop with as it pertains to like making political decisions? And so we could look at sovereignty as the buck stops with us in the Virgin Islands. We would be sovereign as Virgin Islanders. We can see statehood as integration into the US, with the US maintaining this kind of supreme absolute authority. And then with free association, you have two people who have supreme authority in this negotiation, in this agreement, where you can have certain benefits that are conferred to either.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, so what we're going to do now, having established what these three options are, let us look at what would be the challenges or benefits for the Virgin Islands were we to select that particular option. And I'd like to begin with the independence. If in 2027 we decided to become independent, what are the major challenges we're going to face, and what are the benefits that will accrue from that? And I'd like to begin with Professor Weiner, who has done a good economic analysis of this very question. So would you like to come up and yes, give us a section, a section where we get there.
Hold on 1 second. Oh my.
Can I share the PowerPoint?
Yes, I will.
This is not, you could go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, good afternoon. So, oops.
It's coming. Sorry. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, sorry.
So is it being transmitted? People on Teams land can see it?
Don't, hold on 1 second. I don't think they can see it. Oh, we're gonna share the
Yes,
screen.
yeah,
Yep.
share the screen.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, they're gonna see it now. Hold on 1 second. Okay, now. Yeah, they're seeing it.
Okay, so good afternoon. I hope everyone in Zoom land is seeing the slide. So what I would like to briefly do and just set, provoke people and kind of give you some hard economic figures to see what it would mean. And I would defer to the other panelists to talk more about the political implications and the social implications. However, we have to realize that they're all kind of in one kalaloo. They're all mixed together. But I will just be emphasizing more the economic implications. So can I have the next slide, please? So basically, I will look at the economic implications of the three statuses, as Dr. Molnar has before, but also to look at the implications of us with the status quo of continuing indefinitely to be an unincorporated territory. So I think we have covered most of these things, in the previous questions that Dr. Molnar has asked, so we move forward. So next slide, please. So why is this important? There's a connection in every which way. That's why it's important. So as Dr. Supu has said, university recognized goal is for self-determination of all people. And along with the self-determination is the goal that we want to pursue economic development and prosperity for the broadest segment of the population as well, and to develop and maintain your own unique cultural identity. Okay, so political status influences all of these things. It influences the attainment of economic development. It influences whether or not you have full voice, full political agency, and it certainly influences your identity. What do you think of yourself? What does it mean to be you as a people? Okay, and so The one thing I'd like to now say is that unincorporated territory is not acceptable. That is where we are. It means permanent second-class citizenship. It contravenes all of these goals above. It contravenes self-determination because it's not fully actually. And it limits economic development, okay? It limits economic development and it certainly affects economic identity. And in terms of the political implications, we can see here in the Virgin Islands, we are suffering from a very artificial economy. It's not robust, it's not stable. We're suffering from gentrification and we have an identity problem. We don't know who we are. Okay, so let's get into economics of Vietnam. So next slide. We'll begin first of all with the status quo. What does it mean? So basically, the pros of the status quo is that we have a dip at Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam supports us. We have full financial dependency on Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam provides a large amount of support to our annual local budget. And it ranges over time going back to like 2000 to 2022. It ranges roughly between 20 to 35% of our budget comes from the federal government. The second thing is that we have risk protection. We are very vulnerable because of our location in Hurricane Alley. And we always know the US government will be there to provide assistance. They'll always be there to bail us out. We don't have insurance. An independent country, for example, may have to buy a parametric insurance policy, may have to take out a contingency line of credit with banks, may have to issue a catastrophic bond in order to deal with a natural disaster hazard. We don't have any of those things because we know FEMA will take care of it. Okay, the next thing is there's no passport requirement, free travel between the US mainland and here. So it's an opportunity for our local people to go to the States, join the military, seek higher education, seek jobs. And also it's very easy for Americans who live in the mainland to travel here. They don't have to worry about getting a passport to come and have a Caribbean vacation. If they will go to Jamaica or go to Barbados or go to someplace else, they would need a passport and pay a little $10, tourist visa card on landing. And so those are some of the pros. The negatives about continuing in this way is that basically we are constrained economically. We are a competitive disadvantage in competing with other Caribbean states because we are subject to American laws and US labor, minimum wage laws, occupational safety, consumer protection, phytosanitary convention, and these make us, and environmental regulations, and these make us relatively uncompetitive to other countries that don't have these standards. So, for example, the daily wage in Haiti is $2 to $3 a day. The daily wage in the Dominican Republic is about $8 to $10. We are $10.75 per hour. Labor is more expensive here. If you are a foreign investor, you would be attracted more to go to a place with cheap labor. Okay, here we have a panoply of environmental regulations that have to be met with. The other big negative is that we have very little control. We are basically subjects of the US Congress, the US Federal Reserve, US Congress, the chief executive, the president of the United States basically calls the shot. We only have marginal economic decision-making powers in this regard. We don't have a vote in Congress that would affect any taxation or economic policies. All we can do is ask politely to be included, but we really don't have any economic control. And then lastly, because of our colonial trajectory, we are a very unequal society and we are disadvantaged compared to people from the mainland. So this is one of the main reasons. We have very high inequality and it's worsening by the day. And one of the reasons, if you just look at the business sector, very difficult to obtain credit here. And so businesses business people that come from abroad are very much advantaged. They come with home self-financing, they come with high levels of wealth income. And they are able to open up business and basically dominate the local economic landscape. And this is resulting in widening income inequality. Or Gini coefficient for the Virgin Islands is 50. It's very high. Okay, the average for the United States is 48. So we are much more unequal than the entire country. And next one. Now, if you look at statehood, the good things about statehood is that we'll have access to even more federal money. We will be able to access fully federal programs such as Social Security, Medicaid benefits, and also local government agencies will have the right to declare bankruptcy. And the most important one, which is a non-economic aspect, is that we'll have full political equality. The cons of statehood is budget administration. We are financially unsound. And if we become a state, it's going to compound the issue. Okay? So basically, right now, as I mentioned, we have serious problems just making basic matches with federal grant programs. The standard is 10%. And we beg them for waiving the match, 2% match. And the funniest one is that we always ask one federal agency to provide the local match to pay another federal agency. And so, for example, that's what we did with the 401 Wansilla generators that cost $95 million. We basically got cut to put up our money to FEMA. When we become a state, they don't play like that. 10%, non-negotiable. You have to have skin in the game. Next thing is tax abatement. Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands have the most attractive tax abatement programs in all of the US jurisdictions. If we will become a state, that goes away. And so that would affect a lot of the attraction, business attraction that we have coming in to the territory. And the most important one is tax administration and increased tax burden. Right now, we pay our taxes here to the Virgin Islands Bureau of Internal Revenue, our federal income tax 1040 and 1041, which is a trust, you pay here. If we were to become a state, you would have to pay that to Washington. 1040 goes to Washington, and then you would have to pay state income tax. Okay? And so the two levels of taxation now. So if we are in such a bad state with our revenue situation and having constant operational deficits, and we're so dependent on the federal government for transfers to support our local budget, how are we going to do now if we're going to have another layer of taxation and the incomes of the area is very low? Our average income is, it's like in the 40s. If I'm not correctly mistaken, our average income is 48,000, and our median is something like 42. Okay, so we would be facing some difficulties. Now, the next one now, if we become an independent state, we will have full economic policy autonomy, and we will be able to seriously attract geostrategic rivals of the United States. We'll be able to attract the Chinese, for example. The Chinese has a rising economic presence in the Caribbean. And so we will be able to port, the Chinese, whatever come with its own set of issues. On the negative side is that the public financial management will even be WASRA. There's such a word. Because we're so dependent on Uncle Sam right now. And if we become independent, we got no dibs on Uncle Sam no more. They will have no obligation to extend financial assistance to us as a sovereign state. So basically, we will become another Caribbean microstate competing with other independent states to try to attract bilateral foreign assistance and to try to obtain multilateral loans from international development banks such as the Caribbean Development Bank, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, CAF, the Andean Finance Federation. So we would be struggling to raise money. What compounds this is that we are not currently creditworthy. We have junk status bond rate, okay? Our credit rating is not good. So that would cut us off from any sort of issuance of bonds in the commercial sector, and we'll be totally dependent on the world of government transfers from other sovereign states and from multilateral assistance. Multilateral banks will also not like us because we have a serious debt problem. And so if they will be hesitant to extend us large amounts of money. Okay, and the main, our main investor class here, Americans in the main, they will probably be quite interested to see what the new constitution is, what is the new framework is, and they will be a little concerned if we deviate too much from the old American way of doing things, because they want their economic interests to be protected, they want certainty, they want to be their investment to be appropriated. So there might be some increase in uncertainty depending on how we fashion our constitution and what sort of political tone we set forth. And so American investments will go away if we turn out to be, say, extremely nationalistic. And then the last one, if we decide not to be a neo-colony, basically, nobody can give us money. And then the last one is that independence will bring a whole set of new financial responsibilities. So the US would have to spend more money on establishing a central bank. It would have to establish embassies and consulates abroad. It would have to make contributions to various international organizations, say Caribbean Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank. You got to pay money because these are giant financial corporations, cooperatives. Okay, and so if we're having serious problems doing the basics, collecting the trash, educating our students in the public school, environmental protection, police, healthcare, these are additional expenses that we'll be faced with. Hospitals. Yes, medical care. You know, we're not doing the basics well as it is. We are literally a small municipality when we compare ourselves to the mainland. We have a population less than 100,000. We're like Baytown, Texas. Okay, we're a small city. And so if we're not doing those basics as a small city, small municipality, how will we be able to function as a state or as an independent country? So the last one now is basically the free association. So basically we say we want to be like Palau, Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia. We will have more self-autonomy, but our economic dependence will be very high for the same reasons as I mentioned before, okay? And you kind of think is why would the US sign a compact agreement with us? What's in it for the US, right? In the case of the Pacific Island, there's rising tensions with China. China is a rival to the US. The US is very much interested in controlling Oceania. The Indo-Pacific is the new theater of conflict. Okay, so the Pacific FASs, they're in a good position. The United States uses the Marshall Islands, you know, they have big military bases there. The biggest employer in the Marshall Islands is US military bases. They ain't going nowhere soon. With us, we are kind of losing our geostrategic advantage and interest in the United States. We were a deep water port, and they wanted us in 1868, Stewart. They made 2 attempts to buy us before it was successful. But it was because we were a deep port, naval, and be able to project naval power and protect the Panama Canal. But now the world is going through changes. We are now seeing the rise of hypersonic missiles, advanced cruise missiles, drones, 5th generation aircraft. We are not needed. the Panama Canal cannot be protected by having a little military presence here in the Virgin Islands. It has to be much more. Let's look at this past weekend. 300 missiles, cruise missiles went from Iran to Israel in 5 minutes, 1,000 miles. Okay, so our geostrategic value to the US is dropped. And the second one is that against it is that economic assistance per capita will fall. It will likely fall. So basically, you know, you can see here they got 800 million over a period of 20 years. We get half of that in 1 year. So unless the US is going to agree to really keep us at this level of dependence, it's going to be a hard sell for them. So alone, the US received $547 billion in ARPA funding in 1 year. Okay, and then the big negative is net immigration will likely increase. Just as like half the population of the Marshall Islands, the Micronesia, and the Palau live in the United States, it would probably be the same for us. And that aggravates our shortages of skilled labor and and affects labor productivity. And in turn, our possibility for economic growth. And now this is just to kind of show you, numbers don't lie. We're in a bad way. Okay, so basically, I mentioned this before, the average rate of intergovernmental transfers in the United States is from federal level to state is 43. So we're already there. So this number would have to go even up if it became a state. And here are some comparisons. Wyoming is the smallest state with a population of 576,000. They have a GDP of 48.4 billion. They have a state and local per capita debt of 3,437. The US has a per capita debt of 29,000. Now let's look at one of the richest states in the United States, New York. It has a SLG, they have the highest level of debt in the United States, $18,411 for each New York. But their GDP is 2.05 trillion. So we are pretty much more than the average New Yorker in terms of state and local government debt load. But with an economy that's a fraction of what the state of New York is. And then the amounts of awards are very, very high. I'll show you in the next graph. And we got some serious lurking problems. We still have a 5.2 billion unfunded pension fund liability for GRS. And we have not had a budget surplus since Turnbull, since 2007. And we got bad credit rating. And 2 more slides and we're done. And this is just to show you, this is Uncle Sam's in the East. It's incredible. It is average about $53,000 for each Virgin Islander in federal grant assistance that we are getting in 2021. Look at how much it was before. And it really just jumped up after the hurricanes. So the question is, this level is not sustainable. We're benefiting from the hurricanes and we benefited from COVID. But eventually this will trend back down. If we can do a business with this amount of aid, how are we going to do a business with this amount of historical aid? Okay, and then this is GRS. So we bought a couple of years, but look, after 2027, the shortfalls in GRS popping back up. So we need to fix GRS. Is still lurking in the background. We bought time. So conclusion, we can't afford to be nothing. So, so we need to prioritize improving governance immediately. We need to prioritize improving financial stabilization, economic diversification, and obtaining better economic performance. So this is personal belief. My sense is the majority of Virgin Islands do not support independence. They want to maintain some kind of relationship with the US government because they like the Yankee dollar, they like American citizenship, they like being able to travel to the States to get ahead. So if that's the case, we need to develop some kind of consciousness as to what we want to do and work towards that. And so we need to have a political movement for change of status, because this current status is not good, is unacceptable. We're totally lacking in self-respect. Okay, and so, and we still need to be cognizant that whatever we choose, whether it is statehood, compact of association, is gonna be hard. It's gonna be lots of economic costs, okay? And I am there, thank you for your time and attention.
That was a great presentation, wasn't it? Thorough, informative, based on the facts. I wish you could have spent a little more time, Professor Winter, because that middle paragraph when it said, the Virgin Islands economy is an artificial economy. You know, that was really a brilliant statement. And so now, before we open it up to comments from the audience, I'm going to ask our panelists to respond to some of the comments and the presentation of Mr. Winter, and I'd like to begin with Attorney Rowe.
Dr. Warner, we're not gonna invite you to the party. You're gonna kill the vibe. But I think what you did is important and necessary discussion. And I appreciate the discussion on governance, because we have tremendous amounts of money that goes into the territory. But the question becomes, how are they best utilized for our benefit? I think when we have all these boxes that we sit on and it tells us that we can be incorporated, we can choose this one or that one. I think what we're seeing or we're not seeing is a history of how we got here in the first place. And the role that the insular cases played in creating us in the first place. What's interesting to me as a lawyer is that those 6 cases created the doctrine of incorporation, and for us, unincorporation. But it was done by the same court that created separate but equal, the Plessy court, Plessy versus Ferguson. And the language that was used in those cases were racist, and they were harsh. You had words like alien and savage, used to refer to largely Black and brown people. Well, not us, because we weren't there at that time. 1901, we didn't come until 1917. But the spirit of that case still lives with us. So we have these boxes, right? And these boxes say, pick one. And I think these boxes don't apply to us either. As Dr. Winter just pointed out, any one that we choose will have severe consequences for us that may or may not be to our benefit. So what was beautiful about the conversation that we had privately before this was to come up with a hybrid model. One that really takes into account our cultural, our social, our historical, our political, our economical, our geographical, and maybe even our spiritual differences. We are not Puerto Rico. We don't have the population weight of a Puerto Rico. We're a little tiny place with a bunch of little free pocket islands with even smaller populations. Can we really compare ourselves to New York? Are there really no tangible benefits that we add by being a part of this country? I'm proud to be in there. I know that sounds kind of corny to say in a time of neo-colonialism and discussions about that. But I am the daughter of a veteran and a Vietnam veteran, and I am the sister of a 20-year service veteran. The Virgin Islands gives more in lives per capita than any state in the country to military service. I think there are things that we have given in terms of our history and our culture, and our literal physical bodies and time that matter and that go beyond just the numbers. And I'm thinking that we gotta think outside of these boxes. We gotta create new boxes. Maybe it's not a box, maybe it's a circle, maybe it's a dodecahedron. Whatever it is, we have to be a part of that language and unlanguaging of who we were, that requires work. And when you look in this room, and we look outside this room, we're all tired. Everybody's tired. We have Baba, we got hospitals, like you said here. You know, we have real struggles and real issues. Now I want to add this. How is this going to affect my life directly? How do we speak to that? Because if we don't speak to that, how do we create the change that you described that we need to have, the impetus and the push to get us to that political better? So as we continue this discussion, I really hope we'll add creativity to it that really incorporates all the things that make us very different and all the things that speak to our uniqueness that need to be addressed in order to successfully choose which one of these boxes or not we want to do.
We can explain what that is, I don't think they.
This chart is it lists all the different categories. So we can choose from incorporation, status quo, independence, and a whole host of others. But like I said, I think it matters to us, not just that we choose a box, but that those boxes choose us. Those boxes are representative of who we are and our history, as well as who we want to be as we.
Dr. Warner, I wish this was stronger beverage. I listened to you, I got a bad feeling, and listened to you, and you, the attorney, it wasn't pleasant to hear what you said. But I just want to say that we in the Vosgians have a real challenge. The world is changing, the US is changing. I just want to give you a possibility. What would happen if Donald Trump wins? And just for the sake of discussion, we talk about economics, I'm talking about politics. Let's assume Donald Trump wins, and this Donald Trump is crazy up and of course, and there are people in America who live in a fortress America, which means America must withdraw its external core bases and focus on the pipeline. We will be compelled, the Vosgians, to take on some of these issues. As I listen to you speak, I recall when Joanne and I were in the Status Commission, there was a gentleman called Ross Perot who ran for office. And some of these people told some of our people that since the United States owes China money, what would happen if the United States sold the Vosgians to China? That was a discussion held behind private doors. There are some people in America who want Greenland to be purchased and the Vosgians to be sold or liberated. That's the first Donald Trump. The second Donald Trump, if it ever had to occur, it would be far-fetched that what we're discussing today might appear academic, but there can be a changing world dynamic which the United States has a different mindset for all territories, that all 5 territories might be compelled to take a step away from the United States and be considered freely associated or independent. So that's not far-fetched. I think the challenge of the Vosgians is that they've become so accustomed to all this federal largesse. Is that the correct one?
Yes.
Largesse. Free camp, open I'm using Vieta. Free money. Vosgians don't never turn on free money. It's not on the table. Well, that's the perception. It's free money or money. There's no free money in this world. I think that's strings. And I think our challenge is that today we have this largesse. The largesse has strings, maybe shackles. We have to imagine the Vosgians being compelled to become more self-reliant by hook or by crook, by a push, by an external feature. I think it's in our best interest that we find a more perfect union among ourselves and become more autonomous and prepare for the possibility that one of these days, the free thing gets in, the free money, the free camp, down the Section 8, all the nice things we get from the welfare state that the Democratic Party has developed more than the Republican Party, they eventually come to an end. We have to fend for ourselves. Not as an independent society per se, but with some level of time, we maybe even independent, we have to prepare for that day, and it might seem far-fetched for us today, right? As that far-fetched is what we do today.
Before Attorney, Rover or anyone speaks, I need to make it very clear that the opinions expressed by. And that's very important, to go on the record, please. Because the League of Women Voters, we would be banned, we would be thrown out of the organization. If we express personal opinions about, any candidate or political party. So please recognize that, thank you.
So can you turn one way around the bus?
I love how that disclaimer came before I spoke. But I have to disagree with you, and I don't like this language that we use of us of free and welfare and handout. We earned the right to be a part of this country. We have earned the right in blood, we have earned the right, for instance, in St. Paul, where we had Avenza, was the third, largest refinery in the world?
Second in the Western.
And second in the Western Hemisphere, and Crucians have borne the health effects of that and the tremendous amount of wealth that that industry generated throughout the world. So I don't agree when we start to talk about ourselves in this way of we gimme. No, it's give. We have given in blood, health, and our. I'm sorry, I take this seriously. I think that we have to change the way we think about ourselves and the way we think about America. And I think in doing that, we change the way America thinks about us. We are not an appendage to be transferred to whoever country feels that we can be worth the most. We are a whole people with a whole history, with a whole country. We are Americans. And I think that value has to be discussed so that we don't forget that we are not chatting. And if we don't forget it, then we have to transmit back to them so they don't forget it. So conversations like selling us to Greenland become obscene in the 21st century, no matter who president it is. So I'm off my soapbox, but we cannot use that word free. We have borne the weight of our citizenship. And if anything, we deserve more.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Dr. Morgan, for letting me know that I'm not speaking on behalf of the league. And I understand what you're saying, but there is a new mood in the country that we need to be aware of, that there are some people in America who could care less about how much blood has been shed in behalf of the country. It's not my view, it's not my view. I'm just, hold on a minute. The World War II, the Bulgarians were occupied by the Japanese, 10% were killed. They suffered. The Philippines, the United States, the Japanese, they occupied the Philippines. Almost a million suffered. So there's a mindset, they don't care about us. I'm not defending them, I'm just saying this is real talk. We gotta understand the psychology of the people who we are tied to. This is an objective fact. This is what I believe. And I want to emphasize this, that when I speak about the Donald Trump situation, I'm not anti anybody, but the country is going through
Right.
I want to write words and also to put it wrong. A strange situation. Where the dominant family is 4 times indicted with 91 charges. This has never occurred in American history. It's being played out in front of us.
He's tied in 7 states.
Yes, and I was saying this is just a possibility. We better wake up and see this reality. It has to occur. We are in a strange place. We would be very, I would say, uninformed to like this can't happen. If this happened also to us again, we got to know this is our reality. If it happens, we got to be prepared for it and not say, oh God, what happened to we?
Okay, yes,
But I know, tag on to it, I listened yesterday to the Civil Rights Commission hearing. And 2 of the commissioners ask questions that go to what the lead just raised there. They ask how many people are you? What do the Virginians want? They don't want to become independent. Did they see themselves as American? Those were 3 very, very striking questions that came from 2 of the commissioners yesterday. after the presentation of Pamela Colon, on behalf of the BI, advisory committee, and I was taken back by that. So I think Monique is on to something here, and we need to get our together and grow some consciousness and work to position ourselves better and not expect that Uncle Sam will always take care of us.
Yes, and let's, Dr. Seward, you have had an opportunity to say.
I just said my one thing, I said I didn't quite could use.
With your father.
Just very quickly, you're right. And what you talk about is the solutions.
Yes.
What we need to do, we have not because we asked not. And I think we're not doing enough of the work to lay the foundation for what we want and therefore what we receive. So that conversations like you described are seen as for what they are, which is perfect.
Dr. Seward?
I do have to echo the sentiment that Professor Wimmer, it's quite stressful to listen to the economic reality, in part because what you really highlight for us on the economic front is that almost each of the pathways appear to be non-viable, right? It almost appears impossible for us to choose, and that none of them particularly look good. And I think that this is really important because we often look at our hesitation as a community about choosing our political status as if it's our fault and we're not politically advanced enough to like make a choice. But in part, I think that we as a community have been doing these calculations, right? Running the numbers, looking at the political reality, and coming to the decision that statehood, sovereignty, free association, none of them look particularly great, right? Which raises the question of, well, what is it exactly that we have to do to prepare ourselves for a political future? And so I want to talk really quickly, right, about one, why we hesitate so much, but then also two, this other question of like, well, why should we continue to push through the discomfort around addressing political status in order to do so? And I like to quote George Lanning often. He's a Barbadian writer. And one of the things that he says is that by sovereignty, I think the literal meaning that we have in mind is really the freedom from external control, or at any rate, freedom from the control and influence of an external factor. And to look at it then from our side in the Caribbean, that is in our relation to ourselves. You can say that by sovereignty, we mean the collective power to exercise control and direction over the means of our material existence. And by sovereignty, we also mean the freedom to define and redefine all the processes, material and otherwise, which make up our social reality. And so this becomes hard for us in the Virgin Islands and in the Caribbean as a whole, because when we look at each of these options, none of them necessarily change the global power structure, right? And still we have to make a decision as it pertains to status nonetheless. And so really a lot of these questions are boil down to Attorney Broker's point that, well, okay, what exactly does status mean for WAPA, for our energy crisis, for our challenges in terms of the cost of living, housing, infrastructure, and a lot of the things that we deal with disaster recovery, crime, food insecurity, right, in the Virgin Islands. And what we're really starting to recognize is that colonization is a shapeshifter, that it occurs as under the unincorporated territorial status. We see that the sovereign Caribbean is facing neo-colonialism, right? So even though they have won their sovereignty, they're still facing these external pressures, these external controls, right? And then we're also seeing that statehood, I would argue, many Virgin Islanders may not actually love because there's a fear that it could impact our cultural identity, who we understand ourselves to be as a people. If we were to integrate into the American body politic as a state, what rights and freedoms would we have as a predominantly Black and brown people, right? But then also, will we get to maintain our cultural identity a century or 2 centuries from now? And these are important questions, but we still have to address the self-determination question. One, because of democratic representation, right? We have a not voting representative in Congress. We're not able to vote for our president. And so being able to address status allows us to address this question of can we fully and meaningfully participate in our democracy? But then also there's the question of legal rights and protections. that when you have a territory, an unincorporated territory at that, the full rights of the US Constitution do not follow the flag, right, to the territory. So as territorial inhabitants, we don't get all of the protections of the US Constitution. Whereas in addressing status, we have the possibility of crafting a political future that allows us to do so. And then there's also the question of territorial control. How can we shape our policy and manage our territory so that we can address questions of citizenship, border control, peace, quote unquote, in times of war, as well as education. One of the things I hear teachers in Virgin Islands say often is that we've lost a lot of the local control over being able to actually shape our education and our curriculum and our educational experience for our young people, right? And so status really shapes all of these different facets of our lives, our inclusion or exclusion from the June Act, what ships to come in, and who will get to have the final say on these decisions. And so ultimately, I really feel that when we talk about what we're going to do with our status, we really have to also consider that our feelings are really valid. Our hesitation is valid, the communication around it is valid. And yet still, if we understand ourselves to be a predominantly Black people, a Black and brown community fighting for liberation, fighting for freedom, right? In the aftermath of slavery, then in many ways, colonialism is an unacceptable political status for our future.
Great. But one thing I want to say, just so that is troubling is somehow it seems that you would have to give up something based on what I said, that each option you have to gain and give up. There's no option, you can't just gain it, you can't gain everything, you can't have it all.
You know, we have not given Professor Emmanuel a chance to talk. And so, Gerard Emmanuel, let's hear your insight into the discussion.
I'm trying to unmute. Okay, no. I think I had to be unmuted. I don't have the status to unmute myself. I'm a colony of the technological person over here.
He's a second class citizen.
Third.
Can you
But anyhow,
open, can you open
I
your,
like the discussion, and I don't really have anything much to add because, well, y'all have covered just about everything about 14 times. I don't really have much to add. I just think that I'm hoping that this is a good taping of this session, because in the chat somebody asked me, can we get a recording of this? Can we get a copy of this, Dr. Molina?
Yes,
So
I'm glad that you asked the question, Professor Emmanuel. Yes, the league is going to put this on our website, and WTJX has promised that they are going to cover this. They're making a taping of the audio part of it, and he's been taking some stills of this. Professor, whenever individuals are asking how they could get a copy of your presentation, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I could post it to your website if you want.
Okay, yes, we can post it to the league website and the league's website, yes, an email. Yes, yes, we will. Okay, so.
I do have one thing to say though, Dr. Molina.
Yes.
I think given the somber forecast, I still think that we have to move forward. You can't say because growing up is hard, you want to stay as a teenager. We have to bite the dust and move forward. That's what our ancestors did. If they didn't do that, we still would have been in physical slavery. So I think that the status of unincorporated territory, yes, it has its benefits. It doesn't have as many pitfalls as the others, but we don't have a choice. It is our nature to progress. So I can't say what option we should choose, but I think we should move forward, and that will come to us at some point in time.
Professor Hyman, I agree with you. I think that the current status that we live in, this unincorporated status, is unacceptable. It is a total lack of self-respect. And is not gonna lead us anywhere, is going to, it may be comfortable in the short run, but long run, it is not gonna lead us anywhere. I'm frightened about the amount of loss of culture in the Virgin Islands, the amount of gentrification, the increasing inequality. We are fracturing community. We're not coming together. And so I think we need political maturity and consciousness to realize where we are. And at the same time, we gotta be serious about getting better quality political leadership, getting improvements in governance. We need to be able to deliver, take advantage of all this federal money we have and transform the economy, fix the big problems that we have instead of, my good friend, what's your favorite one? Happy We always have conversations in the staircase in the social science building. And so you're stuck on those old time words. But I think, it's shameful that we can't fix one.
I'm so happy that you made that statement and you took something that I was about to say. When you look at any one of these options, you pointed out the pros and cons of all of them. But my position is that almost any one of them could work. The defining factor is leadership. Because when you look, you pointed out all of the cons for independence. And I look into the Eastern Caribbean, and the one place that stands out to me is Barbados. Barbados. I took a trip to Barbados and I was astonished, that, and I said, well, why is Barbados thriving as an independent entity in the Caribbean? The leadership, with all the money that we're getting here, you just pointed to it, Mark, with all of that money that we have gotten, why are we still saying we don't have enough? Why are we still saying that, the generator's not up? What's happening? The Virgin Islanders, it's the leadership. Yes.
Can I add a little now? I would add, we have some areas to work on. Our political culture needs to improve. Our political system needs to improve. The reason why Barbados can produce the Martins, the Barrows, is that the political culture has developed what is an identity, step one. We lack a consensus and identity, step one. We lack a concept of one Virgin Islands. We have a twiddle-dum dynamic between both districts. I don't want to get the crucials upset. But I have some families in Florida, and somehow we have this mindset that we don't have the requisite unity in this community. And then we've developed this mentality that no matter how many Yankee dollars we have, we still can't spend it correctly. We have on paper $12 billion, more than the entire Caribbean combined, and we still don't have money. So there's a mindset like a football money, the food is thirsty, the abundance of water. We have so much that we don't know how to maximize what we have. So these are internal issues. No one will fix this for us. In Barbados and other Caribbean islands, whether it is Jamaica, Trinidad, there are certain thresholds they cross. And we have to cross the threshold, having greater unity, a sense of political maturity. We are too cross-country driven. So if I don't like Mark Wenner, he could have all the answers, he could cure COVID. It's Mark Wenner, I want him. We don't want him. Oh, it's like, we have to develop that sense. So then the leadership is just one layer of a deeper issue. So we have to do some internal work. So I'm adding to what you're saying at the moment.
I agree with you, Dr. Sekou. But I think before we get to unity, like you said, we have that work to do. As a sole cushion on this table, over here. Where are you? Back to you. I'm gonna say that there's inequalities in terms of distribution that we need to talk about. St. John, I think, has to have more political representation and discussion and be able to talk about their specific and their unique needs within the political realm. So we do have work to do, but the one thing that I'm not hearing us talk about after Dr. Wenner gave his PowerPoint presentation that impressed all of us is cool. It's cool. And I think sometimes we forget, we are the people, we are descended from the people who freed themselves. We have that spirit within us. We so focus, I told a friend of mine, in the States, the kids know that the sky is the limit, that's their blue, right? The sky is the limit. My blue was always the ocean, it was from here, the green here to the ocean here. I knew the smallness of where I came from, and I would reflect it. But what if we gave ourselves hope and power and creativity, talk about what we can do in the face of that much needed information Dr. Wenner shared with us, so that we recreate what is possible. I don't think we often give enough power to possibility. We look at what we don't, we speak the language of not. We cannot, we do not, we don't. But if we are not ourselves, we are an amalgamation of not just Black and brown people, we're a crossroad culture. St. Croix literally means Holy Cross. We're a crossroad people. Why can't we harvest the power, the mental power, the spiritual power that exists within these islands? And I think if we do that, we will.
Yeah, I'd like to pose two questions that came from the audience. The first one is to Dr. Sekou. Dr. Sekou, could you expound on the fourth option you referenced in your opening remarks, especially in light of the resolution 748, removing Puerto Rico from the non-subtitle. Dr. Sekou?
Actually respond to that.
Oh.
I have to absolutely agree with you on the subject of hope, because I think one of the benefits of knowing that all the options are technically bad is that we then have to look in the mirror and decide what it is that we actually want as a people. And this goes back, I think, to Dr. Sekou's point about if you look at the political status commissions and constitutional conventions of the past, we know that this question of who we are and who we want to become has really been the Achilles heel of our efforts to be self-determined. And so I think that sometimes we shy away from that and we lead into hopelessness because we think, oh, these are terrible people, we can't get this, we can't get on, etc. When in reality, this is an opportunity for us to say, what is actually at the root of these debates and tensions between ancestral rules on both English, Virgin Islanders, and Virgin Islanders from the wider Caribbean. And I think that when we look at that closely, we could see that it's flowing. It's a lot of the boundaries, the tensions, the fighting for resources, the xenophobia that emerges when we are pit against each other. And so I think that we have an opportunity really to craft a Virgin Island identity that honors our plurality, our diversity, our connections to each other, our connections to the wider Caribbean, and to really move forward together. And so I don't think that we should believe that because we failed that in the past, that we may not be able to craft this collective identity now or moving forward. We were just collecting data. Okay, all of those failed conventions, all of the quote unquote commissions that didn't result in a status change, that was data, it was research. And we can then use all of that information that we figure out to determine who we are as a person.
That's a great suggestion. And I want to point out, Dr. Stewart, that you have hit on what the league plans to do next. As we indicated earlier, we're going to be looking at future forums going forward. And one of the forums that we want to talk about is one of Virgin Islands identity and activity. I think that's an important discussion that has to be had. Yes,
Okay, yeah, 2 seconds. Yeah, I think Dr. Stewart hit it on the head, from Stewart, that we, she said the least, but she said the most important thing. And I 100% agree. The issue that we already have is that we first have to identify a sense of us, a sense of identity, and hold our leaders accountable and move in one direction, but not be too fractured.
Absolutely, and so that's why that's David's gonna tackle next. Dr. Sekus, would you answer that question?
I must say that one of these particularly eloquent women, I don't know how to speak as eloquently as they do, but I want to break that question in pieces. The Puerto Rican journey to self-determination is very unique. In 1948, they acquired the power to elect governors, and they also voted on a constitution, a territorial constitution, and then Governor Munoz Marin promoted the idea of Puerto Rico being in Spanish a free associated state, but un estado libre, in Spanish. Hope my Spanish is correct. And it was also a commonwealth. It was also a territory. In 1952, that is before resolution 1514 was passed. 1514 was passed in 1960. So the Puerto Ricans had already achieved the maximum amount of autonomy under the unincorporated territorial status action. And the Puerto Ricans also had a pre-existing nationalist tradition. Some of the nationalists would even throw bombs at people. In fact, I said that I went to even, go to the Congress and cause a little trouble, if you recall this in the 50s. You know what? Okay. I wasn't even a thought then, but I'm saying the nationalist tradition in Puerto Rico, though very small, has had a very fervent base that's willing to use armed struggle. So the Puerto Ricans had a unique situation that there was a dominant pro-autonomous faction led by the Populares, the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico. There was also a national tradition. There was also an annexationist or pro-statehood tradition. So by 1970, Puerto Rico developed three distinct parties based on three distinct status options. One for the existing Commonwealth, which is autonomous status, one for statehood, and one for independence. So, in truth, being taken off the committee decolonization was premature because in truth, it wasn't resolved. And until this day, until today, there's still an ongoing discussion in political status. So in that sense, the view that it is premature is actually correct. History has shown it's incorrect to say that there's no longer status discussion. I think first and foremost, we've never developed the tradition of political parties being organized based on political status. In fact, I'm really careful because it's not a political discussion, but our politicians, they view political status as a June status is discussed in the election. They don't have to discuss political status because it's not a mobilizing device. We rather discuss the very important issues in the end. So it is not in our culture to discuss political status. Yet the discussion involves us in every possible way. So I made reference to resolution 2625. It is rarely discussed, and activists can only discuss it because they don't understand what it means. In 1970, the United Nations said that the three major options are favored, but any option that a people vote for in a free democratic election is an expression of self-determination. Which means if a people decide we create a hybrid, we want a hybrid option that is autonomous. I think like Molina, Lucy Molina was promoting this Commonwealth. I remember he was giving me a lot of energy about that. The Commonwealth that was proposed then was an autonomous, somewhat free associated option that was based on the Romanian model that would have allowed a level of self-government and autonomy, but still US ties. But it wasn't supported because we didn't understand what it meant. But I'm saying that in 1970, it was understood that if you create a hybrid or anything that is freely decided by the people, it is considered a manifestation of self-determination. And that's not what I say. You can Google it, Google resolution 2625. It's a long resolution with a subsection which reference to this idea. So we can see the hybrid. Now, it's going to happen. Task because we have to convince the rest of the country that we should have all the benefits. We have shed all the blood, sweat, and tears that other Americans and then some, but we deserve an action that allow us to have it the best of both worlds, and then in a way a bridge to the Caribbean with American and Caribbean, Caribbean and America. We will be a bridge, but what must be emphasized is that with every self-determination, people must have that right to govern themselves. The question is that, do we have that desire? If we don't, let's start a path with people interested in this self-determination discussion.
Yeah, and so the second question that builds on that, the second question is how can we get the Virgin Islands to pull together and build and build our economy?
We're doing it now, if I can jump on. I think, and this is where Mark and I will differ a bit, I am optimistic. If you study sociology, the Virgin Islands is one of the few places that suffered a 100% change of demographics in the 1960s. Sociologists say when a population changes by 10%, xenophobia intensifies. You go to Texas, California, Arizona, New Mexico today, you can see xenophobia. The Virgin Islands doubled its population in 10 years. In the 70s, the period of intense xenophobia, it has eased up a bit. I am optimistic. I have hope that this community will overcome it, but it's going to take a lot of education. It's going to take creativity. Like what you're doing right now with this discussion.
And leadership.
You get understand? Yeah. And leadership, but also patience. It takes time. I don't know any society that will go through what we went through. And something we didn't discuss, we went through 8 mega hurricanes in 40 years. 5 years, we had 2 big ones. And we lost 20% of our population. Where else under the American flag can you find that comparison? And the very fact that we are still here is a miracle to our resilience and our strength. So I would say in some respects, yes, it's rough, but I see hope for us. And if we don't live to see our grandchildren live to see and say what the grandparents did their job, it's still the part of us.
Okay, thank you. And the last comment from Professor Emmanuel. Oh, we have to unmute him. Wait, just a minute, Gerard. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, the question in the chat is this. It's the caliber of our leadership is a direct function of the maturity and education of the electorate. Thus, it all begins with the electorate. Additionally, we have a large segment of our population that may not have our political status as uppermost in their mind. Many are here simply for economic opportunity. And this is the question. As such, the status quo is beneficial. Could the panel comment on these views? Were they clear?
Of course, say something. I noticed that more on top of leadership. I don't like to compare, but there was this governor, governor Bag of Fish. Lagoyo Fish, I found Bag of Fish from Illinois. There's been these 10 governors who have been impeached. We have presidents who have been impeached, senators who are in trouble. And if we're comparing ourselves, let's be fair. I know we could put laws in our local politicians, but we're not worse than them. They are a lot worse than us. I don't think we are doomed. I think we have problems, and because the place is small, we can throw blows at our leadership, but our leaders are not the worst. There's room for improvement, but we're not the worst. That's all I want to say.
I would second the comment, Professor Emmanuel. Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges, I think we agree that we need high level of social consciousness and identity as people, a community come together. But I think in terms of the quality of leadership and accountability, we will not get better leaders if the electorate don't hold our leaders accountable. Right. And so one of the things that, kind of blew me away is that I was doing research for this thing. And I wrote an article that was not accepted by the newspapers back during the election time. And I was noticing, I call it political budgeting. And political budgeting is very widespread and it basically is simple. You will see an acceleration in the expenditure of government funds in the run-up to election. And then after the election, you see fiscal issues appearing, irresponsibility, problems coming in, right? And I wanted to publish articles comparing that it happens in the United States, it happens in Italy, all over the place, and it was happening here. And today, finally, they upgraded the thing, and I encourage you guys to go to the Office of Management and Budget website and look at the disbursement patterns for the opera funds. October of 2022, woo! Then it dropped down. And then in January, we launched broke. We ain't got money. That is political budgeting. And the people knew it was going on during the election, and they still voted 55% for the current leader. They don't hold them accountable. And so that is immaturity in the electorate. And you know somebody giving you a 6 for 9.
Yeah.
You know somebody just making or people line up in the hot sun for a handout, giving $1,000 taxi handout to taxi drivers that needed the handout in September of 2021, not in October of 2022, and everybody voted.
Indeed, yeah, what I'd like to do, what I'd like to do is, we're coming now just a couple minutes before 3 o'clock, and we're coming to the end of our forum. I'd like to just, find out, from you, I'm inviting our virtual audience, of which you are legion, and for our physical audience, so please send us your email comments and about the forum. That would be very helpful to us as we move forward. We hope, the league hopes that this was informative and you came away with facts and figures, unbiased comments for the most part. And no, I may have my personal opinion about the but that's neither here nor there. So if you could send us your comments and help us to prepare for a future forum that we're going to do on identity as we move forward. I'd like to, as we close, ask each one of our panelists to make just a summary remark as we move forward. No long statements, just a summary statement that you would like the audience to be able to leave with. So we began with you the last time, we begin at the other end.
Well, first of all, I don't want you guys to think I'm pessimistic. Is my image, I'm just clear eyes. But on this very important topic, I would say yes, we need to have a galvanizing moment to come together as a people, as a community, to define who we are, who we want to be, and work in unison towards that goal. You know, and political status is that we're currently in is unacceptable. I laid out that all of these other options, they got serious problems and negative economic implications of non-viability. So I think our first priority is to fix our financial house, restore good governance, and work towards those two in parallel, developing identity consciousness and, you know, having better governance. And then come 2027, maybe we should propose a hybrid and have an intelligent conversation with one who work with us instead of accepting what other people put in front of us. I would end with that.
Thank you.
I would add that there's a saying that I've used in the past, and I'll say this: us, if not us, who? If not us, when? I want to
Get involved. Every person needs to get involved. We can vote. We treat the vote like we treat church. We do it every once in a while. We walk away. We go to sleep, and we expect the world to change. We wake up again and we do it again. But faith without work is fruitless. There are organizations like the League. Get involved. Become a member. Volunteer once a week to do one thing in this community that will add to the better. Small drops and simple can fill a bucket. Get involved.
saying that colonialism is things like oppressive world borders that occupy territory, and that we should probably think of colonization as building worlds that are more loving and designing and inhabiting more loving. And so I know that when we talk about political process, it can get tense and heated, and sometimes it sounds like it's a very intellectual activity. And perhaps to oppose this idea that like maybe our political status and self-determination project is falling more deeply in love with ourselves and like having real conversations about what we as a community deserve, what it is that we truly desire, how we could take better care of ourselves and take better care of one another. And when you really like love somebody and your community, you don't take abuse from them, but also you give grace, right? And so I think that we can think of our decolonization, our political project as really loving ourselves more wholly and defining and deciding what political structure is gonna allow us to do that.
Isn't that our, that's our philosophy, this is our philosophy, our very good philosophy. And, with a close, Dr. Emmanuel,
Yes.
your closing remarks? Please, unmute yourself, Professor Emmanuel. Please.
Okay, now I could do it. Yes, I just want to say thank you for this honest discussion. We don't usually have honest discussions. And I hope the league, I don't want to beg the league, but we need to encourage other organizations as well to build upon this foundation, this solid foundation that was established here today. And I really feel honored to be part of this, even though I didn't get to say much. I didn't need to say much. I can't compete with these people, man. Y'all did a great job. But Dr. Mullen, I think there are a lot of questions that people still have. And you said they could share an email, send you
Yes,
an email.
please. Yes, we're encouraging people to send your email comments to us. We're going to put them up on our website when we're going to have a conversation on this, and we'll ask our 4 panelists to respond to the questions that are coming in that they didn't have an opportunity to respond. So let us have a chat, so to speak. The league is going to facilitate a chat with the public and our fabulous 4. I also want to encourage, I believe it was Attorney Roker who said, join the league. We really need you. Come and help us bring this information to the public, engage in these discussions, join the league. Visit our website, get an application, come on board. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.